Thank you for joining us now. Let's shift our focus now. The high cost of living has become a pressing issue in Nigeria, prompting urgent government intervention to address the escalating prices of essential goods and services. The House of Representatives recently made a fervent appeal to the federal government and critical stakeholders to open the National Food Reserve, citing the skyrocketing expenses in housing, food, healthcare, and education, which have significantly strained the finances of citizens. Well, this plea comes in the wake of rising food prices, which have sparked protests and exacerbated the financial burden on individuals and families, particularly those with limited income. Well, to discuss this, I'm joined by the lead partner at Cardinal Professional Services, Mr. Emmanuel Onasami. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Onasami. With rising prices...
Thank you, Frank.
Yeah, thank you. With rising prices squeezing, household budget. Now, talk to us. What are the implications of these? And again, secondly, what are your concerns about the current cost of living in Nigeria?
Well, thank you, Frank, once again for having me. I think everybody is getting the bite, both the rich, the middle income class, and then the people at the bottom of the pyramid. But you agree with me that the people at the bottom of the pyramid are the biggest hit when it comes to, fending for food. Rising cost of food has become a major challenge for households in Nigeria. But before we even began discussing the impact on the society, I think it is noteworthy to mention that the impact of inflation, which was primarily led by the devaluation of Naira and also the removal of fuel subsidy, contributed a great while, to the rising cost of goods and services within the economy. But within the agricultural sector, there are some activities that we need to pay attention to, which may also be the reason why the prices of food have been skyrocketing lately. And the set of people I'm talking about is the activity of the middlemen when it comes to aggregating agricultural produce and distributing it to the right markets. What we've seen lately is that the activity of middlemen in the agricultural value chain has kind of, number one, impacted on the scarcity of products, where you see some of those players, aggregating these products, ordering them for the purpose of creating scarcity, and they can then push those products to the market at higher rates. And also, the margins that these people would naturally add, to this process also, contributed to the prices of products. So the activities of middlemen is contributing to this high price of foods that we are currently experiencing, coupled with the inflationary impact of logistics, taking the product from the farm and then to the market. So having appreciated that, the effort of the government is noteworthy to say, there is a need for intervention to bring grains, to the market so that people can get grains. But the implementation of the process has to be sincere so that the people intended, to benefit from that arrangement are actually getting the benefit.
Mm. So beyond the financial strains on individuals and households, talk to us more. So what is the impact of these on businesses?
Okay, so I will get to business very quickly. I was speaking to a colleague. I was telling the colleague that it may be time for us to look around our neighborhood and see, how we can help people around us, especially those people at the bottom of the pyramid, particularly from a security perspective. When someone is without food, there is high likelihood that social vices may then become attractive, So if you want to live in a neighborhood and experience some level of peace, you may have to find a way of getting some community action and supporting people that are at the bottom of the pyramid. Away from that, businesses have employees working for them, and they also get input into their operations. Inflation generally has dipped the profitability of businesses and also reduced the purchasing power of employees. You then see employees, just waiting paycheck to paycheck and having to, lean on loan apps or avenue where they can get a payday loan in anticipation of the next paycheck. And that has been the experience of most Nigeria, trying to work around this economic hardship in quote, that they are being faced by the high cost of food and also inflation. So businesses are they have to unlock additional liquidity to get operations running, and where you are unable to unlock liquidity, then the business going concern, is frustrated. And that's why we can see a lot of businesses being reported all over the country shutting down because you need more cash to operate. And if you don't have the cash, you don't have any other option than to shut down.
So how do you think we can boost consumer spending, perhaps empower the average Nigerian in terms of purchasing power of average Nigerian? How do you think we can boost that? Because we'll talk about disposable income within the household.
Yeah, so boosting the purchasing power is not necessarily a response of increasing wage, such like the Labour Congress is currently asking that the minimum wage should be pushed up. It's not a concept, but rather, addressing the causes of, inflation that is actually reducing the purchasing power of Nigerians, And we can see the CBN putting on some measures to possibly strengthen the naira, and they are actually pushing strongly to reduce the demand on naira. But beyond currency, beyond the naira, devaluation of the naira, there are other factors of productions that we need to pay attention to from both the short term to medium term and then the long term. From the short term, interventions like the supply of grain, giving people, additional stipend, especially the most vulnerable people are short-term measures. But from medium term to long term, the government needs to start looking at how we can be self-sustaining, as a nation, just like the president has mentioned a few days ago in one of the speeches, where he said that Nigeria is looking at the position of getting self-sufficient when it comes to the food that we need to eat. And this cannot be just on the table. We need to start seeing measures that are speaking in that direction. I believe strongly that our rural community needs to be empowered to produce food. The CBN has supported initiatives like that in the past, like the Anchor Borrower scheme. I think we need to look for more schemes that can unlock food, for the Nigerian citizen, and as such, reduce the inflation in the food sector. The problem is that as of today, when you take out the amount you need to buy food, you are barely left with nothing. You understand? And that's why, Nigerians have very limited discretionary spending, and other sectors that are operating in the non-essentials are seriously facing the heat, and they are not really getting Nigerians to patronize them, apart from food. That is a necessity.
Now, the impact of the surging cost of living has prompted President Bola Tinubu to direct an emergency meeting to tackle the issue and stem the tide of public discontent. How do you see this move impacting the situation positively? Because if you remember, he also has ordered that there should be a great release from the National Reserve.
True. So the moves are steps in the right direction, but more importantly is the implementation. In the past we've seen, government intervention getting into the wrong hands. You will recall the COVID-19, experience where, some of those palliative products were ordered, by some players, within the chain. This time around, if you really want to get the impact of those moves to get directly to those people you are targeting, there has to be, concerted effort to monitoring the implementation of those measures. They could be good on paper, but if the implementation are not followed through to ensure that the people that are meant to get this succor, this time around, then the situation may not change. You could actually say there should be release of grains, and grains are released, and there will still be protest. The reason for the protest is because the people that should get the grains are not really getting the grains, and I also believe that, beyond what measures have been put in place currently, the government needs to have some regulatory measures, managing the impact of middlemen in the agricultural value chain so that we don't create artificial scarcity that's leading to hike in the prices of food in Nigeria.
I was going to go there, but you just answered that because I was going to say, okay, beyond these palliative measures, what should the expectations be? For instance, what are your expectations, from the government in addressing this situation? But let's talk in terms of long term now. What kind of measures, policy directives would you want to see on ground to address the cost of living?
Yeah, so Nigeria inflation from history, has demonstrated to be food-led. And what do we mean by food-led is that the prices of food seems to drive the inflation figure, month on month, and as such, if Nigeria is able to solve the problem of feeding its people, I think we'll be able to drive our inflation down as significant as possible. And that means that on a long-term basis, medium to long-term basis, there has to be a strong focus, a rededication on self-sustenance when it comes to food production. And an idea has been done in the past where you empower the farmers and through loans and infrastructure mechanization in order to get the products, agricultural produce to be surplus. And that was experimented with some grains, rice, millets, and maybe cowpea. We got some results then, but I think it was not really followed through. This time around, I think beyond the federal government, I think there has to be some collaboration at the state level and more importantly at the local government level, where the three arms of government are coming together on the round table, developing a framework of solving the food sufficiency challenge that we currently have in Nigeria. I see a future, if we are very, very serious about implementing a solution about food sufficiency, where all our rural community are the food machines, where they produce essential food products for consumption in Nigeria, where we are able to even, produce quantities for processing and for export, where that could be done. For instance, you can look at a state and say, what is your strength as a state? What is your strength as a rural community? And position a private partnership, a program there to support the farmer within that rural community, and then get the community to churn out month on month, season upon season, food that we require, especially when it comes to that food crops. The same can be done to some cash crops, for the purpose of earning some export earnings as a nation. I believe strongly that agriculture still positioned as one of the biggest strengths of Nigeria for export earnings, apart from crude oil.
Okay, let's talk about the central bank's effort. Recently, the central bank faces scrutiny over its policies amid its efforts to address inflation. First, of course, they promised that inflation was going to drop to 21.4% in the year. Do you see these measures, some of the measures recently, embarked upon by the CBN? Do you see them, curbing the high inflation or the high cost of living and ultimately impacting on the rise of inflation in Nigeria?
Okay, thank you very much, Frank. And speaking on the efforts of CBN, the CBN, they are trying to look at things from the monetary policy perspective and how they can manage that space very strongly to curb inflation or reduce inflation. And they are giving a very strong message. I don't want to be in the shoe of Mr. Cardoso right now. Things are pretty not very, good. And if you are in his shoe, you want to throw in any measure as much as possible to arrest the situation. And that's why we can see the circulars coming in, week out, just to see to it that the demand on forests within the domestic economy, is significantly reduced. There are steps in the right direction, and I can say that emphatically. A bank keeping excess forests, is not going to support the economy in any way. There's a need for banks to release excess forest liquidity that they may have with them, and as much as possible. But how it doesn't really matter how novel, those measures are, I think the governance at the level of the CBN needs to be strengthening. In the past, you've seen novel policies coming out, but the implementation is weak. When the circular about, bank, dropping their liquidity, it was estimated that about 5 trillion, dollars is supposed to get into supply, to the economy as additional forest. But we are currently running into like the third week or fourth week of that particular circular, but we've not really seen the impact of those liquidity in the market. That means is that some of those banks may still be holding on to that forest, and that's where the CBN governance on some of these policies needs to be stronger, so that we get every player within that sector to, comply with this circular so that we can see the impact on the economy. The value of Naira is very significant to the inflation that we are currently experiencing. And if we can get the Naira to be strengthened, imports will become cheaper and the prices of goods, we also reduce, while we continue to see how we can be self-sufficient and less import dependent as a nation.
Now, while appearing before the Senate last week, the CBN categorically put out a statement out there that Nigerians need to cut down on the amount of demand or the rate of demand for US dollars. Perhaps that will impact on the FX rate in the market. Speak to us on these. How significantly do you think this measure will yield results? How do you think it will impact change behavior of maybe demand for dollars in the market?
So like I said earlier, I think the challenge we have is governance over our laws and our policies. You understand? Beyond the CBN, measure to drop down demand and instructing the banks to release liquidity, talking to IMTOs, the Western unions and all that to do transactions just in Naira, and all that, just in a bit to push for more demand. But I think we need to look at this thing more holistically. There's a law in Nigeria that currently forbids, transactions in Forex or USD in Nigeria, but we still see a lot of institutions, we still see a lot of corporates, especially in the real estate sector. If you come to the eyebrow area of Lagos, Abuja, you still see some landlords demanding rents in dollars. You still see some schools demanding school fees in dollars, which are situations that you cannot really experience outside Nigeria. You cannot be in the UK and you want to make school fees payments in Naira. They will not agree, because the demand for your local currency must go up if you want to strengthen your local currency. So if people are not demanding your local currency, but they are demanding other currencies, then your local currency will get devalued. So beyond just the effort of the CBN, I think more holistic, macroeconomic policy around strengthening the laws that are already governing transaction in USD within the domestic market needs to be further tightened. And I think it's more of an issue of will, the political will to strengthen that, because you realize that the people that are supposed to implement this law are also the biggest beneficiary of some of these loopholes that we currently find within the economy. So it's for a strong leader that is able to say that we need to stop this, and then we need to start doing the things according to the laws of the land. If we are able to implement those laws that says that transaction in Nigeria alone should be domiciled in Nigeria, then we'll go a long way in reducing the pressure on dollars.
I'm going to let you go in a moment, but I'll need you to talk to us about the CBN MPC meetings up in about 2 weeks from now, less than 2 weeks from now. Talk to us about your outlook. Perhaps there are quite a number of things the CBN is expected to look at. The inflation rate is there. The interest rate, rather, is there. Perhaps experts are saying that the CBN may review the interest rate upward. And so the market seems, expectant of what the CBN is going to do at its next meeting. So what's your outlook on what is likely to happen at the next meeting?
Okay, so let me first commend the courage of Mr. Cardoso. There's been a lot of pressure to have the very first, MPR meeting, MPC meeting, and it's finally coming up in 2 weeks. And from his perspective, they really want to understand the dynamics that is contributing to the monetary policies, movements in the economy. And I think it's a good time for them to see it. I would like to say this, that we need more, based on the demand for forests in the economy. Obviously, we need more inflows of, forests into the economy. And you can either do that either through the foreign portfolio investment or your foreign direct investment. Foreign direct investment, it may take a bit of time, to come in, but FPI seems to be like a short-term instrument to bring in inflows of forests into the economy. And I see the MPC going in that direction. So because of that, interest rate may leap maybe 100 basis points and all that from the prediction. I see the interest rate going up so that we can encourage foreign portfolio investors to come and look at our stock market that's currently performing super well. And that's the direction I predict that the MPC will go. And in order to stimulate inflow of forests into Nigeria and kind of meet up with the demand for forests in the economy. But beyond that, I think the CBN should continue to strengthen its efforts, to cut down on demand of forests within the economy by working with other stakeholders, to holistically address the issue where we locally demand forests within the local economy.
So for you, what is likely to be the topmost priority for CBN at the next meeting? Is it inflation? Is it interest rate?
Okay, so it's the truth is that it's neither here nor there. The dynamics of these indices can either move in any direction. And for example, if you increase the interest rate, you'll be able to get inflow of forests, and that can potentially, increase supply within the economy and further strengthen the naira, and then that way you'll be able to reduce inflation. So that is the direction I see them going. So if they increase the interest rate, it is with the hope that can potentially help drop inflation in a measure. And that is where I think they will want to go.
Well, I think we'll just have to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time. Mr. Emmanuel Onasami is the lead partner at Cardinal Professional Services. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, Frank, for having me.
All right. It's now time to review.